A homeless man saved a millionaire's life by pulling him out of a burning car. When the businessman saw his face, he gasped in shock, recognizing him as Dad. Where did you get this? Asked 5-year-old Agata, holding a round piece of plywood with a painting of the sunrise over a lake. Where did you find this, Agata? Her father, Cairo, patted her on the head. Mom was unpacking boxes and found it, and I wanted to take this beauty for myself. Who painted it? This was a long time ago, sweetheart, Cairo said, pinching the bridge of his nose with his fingers. It was painted by a boy. He was probably about 7 years old then. But unfortunately, he passed away. Why did he die? Agata looked at her father with wide eyes. He hid in an old shed and started a fire to keep warm, but a fire broke out. He didn't manage to escape the flames and died. I feel so sorry for him, tears welled up in Agata's eyes. I'll put this picture on my little table and look at it. The boy's soul will be happy. It will be happy, right? Mom says that the souls of the dead are happy when they are remembered. Yes, dear, your mother is absolutely right. Nacho Navarro's, that was the boy's name, soul will be happy when you remember him by looking at this picture. Did he give it to you himself? She asked, looking at the drawing. Yes, I was sitting on a bench, and he was drawing there. I was already 17 then. And he suddenly says, "Do you want me to give it to you?" So I took it. I kept it among my old things. So many years have passed. If Nacho hadn't died, he would be about 20 now. Oh, why did he run away from the camp then? Maybe he was scared of something? Agata asked seriously. I don't know, sweetheart. It seemed there was nothing to be afraid of. Now no one will answer that question, why he ran away and what he wanted. It was already dark. The road was completely empty. Cairo Diaz was returning home from a business meeting. He felt a bit uneasy, though he couldn't explain this anxiety. Suddenly, Cairo stopped. The car refused to move, and it smelled like smoke. Moments later, bright tongues of flame began to burst from under the hood. Cairo couldn't breathe. He seemed to lose all strength in an instant and had no idea what to do. He couldn't even open the car door and escape from being burned alive. Suddenly, he heard the sound of glass breaking. Everything was swimming before his eyes. Cairo didn't even know if it was reality or a dream. He opened his eyes. He saw the face of that same boy, Nacho Navarro, only now grown up. The same dreamy eyes, the same triangular scar on his cheek. Cairo's head was spinning. He lay on the damp grass, wet from the rain. Are you feeling better? Asked the young man, leaning close to his face. He looked like a vagabond. His clothes were tattered, and his hair was sticking out. Cairo noticed this even in the gathering darkness. Ghosts don't seem to age, Cairo muttered. What do you mean? The vagabond didn't understand. Nacho Navarro? No, Dimas Gutierrez, he lowered his eyes. The same face as that boy who died many years ago after running away from the camp. What? Were you at that camp? The vagabond became alert. Can you sit up? Listen, what about my car? Cairo responded with a question. It blew up. I only managed to drag you here. Something must have short-circuited. It caught fire badly. You saved my life. Thank you, buddy. Where do you live? Wherever I can, the young man replied. I have no shelter. A bit unlucky in life, he sighed and stared off into the distance. Listen, why don't you come with me? I should thank you somehow. The wife and daughter were sitting in the living room, playing charades. Agata ran to the sound of the opening door. Dad! The girl exclaimed, rushing to hug her father. And who is this? She looked at her father's companion. This. Dimas. My name is Dimas, little one, the young man smiled. Blanca, Cairo's wife, appeared in the hallway. Dear, This brave guy just saved my life, Cairo said as he wearily sank onto the poof by the front door. What happened? Blanca asked in fright. Why is your face black, as if covered in soot? Were you in a fire? You could say that, Blanca. The car caught fire. Can you imagine? Demas pulled me from the flames, and then the car turned to ashes. It blew up pretty badly, Demas said, sniffling. Blanca, please find some clothes for my savior. We urgently need a shower and some hot tea. Although, maybe it's better to have some cognac. Blanca went to put Agata to bed, and Cairo and Demas sat in the living room, talking quietly. I am indeed Nacho Navarro, the vagabond suddenly said. Apparently, 2 shots of cognac had loosened his tongue. You're joking. Nacho Navarro died in the fire many years ago. He ran away from the camp. His uncle identified the charred body as his nephew's. Additionally, a locket was found in his pocket with his name engraved on the back, Nacho Navarro. It was just that God was on my side. I dropped my locket near that old shed. I ran and ran, grabbing a backpack with crackers and water that was lying right near the shed. I traded my locket for food. I ran for a long time, not stopping, and then I was found and recognized as the boy who escaped from the shelter far from the camp where my uncle sent me before getting rid of me. Why did you think your uncle wanted to get rid of you? Are you really the boy who gave me the round picture with the sunrise over the lake? A picture? I don't remember, the young man shrugged. How old were you when you were in that camp? 7. And now I'm 21. And all this time I've lived under a different name, the name of that poor fellow, I suppose, who was found burned along with that decrepit shed. Buddy, I don't understand anything. Tell me everything in order. All right. I remember everything as if it happened yesterday. And the young man told everything that happened to him many years ago. Nacho Navarro lived in a loving and caring family, but unfortunately, such a happy life did not last long. His parents died, and the boy was taken in by his uncle and aunt. But they did not have any love for their nephew. Instead, they were obsessed with his inheritance, which they desperately wanted to seize. The plan was simple but very cruel. They intended to kill their nephew. Nacho overheard this one night. The uncle and aunt did not realize that their nephew was eavesdropping from behind the door, discussing their treacherous plan. We need to get rid of the boy, said the uncle. Then we will take over all the property and money of my cousin. We have no other relatives, and neither does her husband. That's clear, but you're not going to kill him, are you? Asked the aunt. I'm afraid there's no other way. These words were enough for 7-year-old Nacho to decide to run away, but he didn't manage to because he was sent to a camp for children of wealthy parents, a luxurious camp designed for a wonderful vacation for kids. But Nacho couldn't relax. How could he fool around and enjoy his vacation knowing that his only relatives wanted to kill him? That evening, Nacho was lucky. The guard got distracted and didn't notice as Nacho slipped through the gate. Not far from the camp was that very old shed. It might have been used to store hay for horses or something else. Nacho found a backpack with a few crackers, a couple of apples, and a bottle of water. The boy stuffed his pencils and sketchbook into it and, removing his locket from his neck as if paying for the food, set off. By the next evening, he was found and placed in a shelter. In the backpack, they found a book signed with the name Demas Gutierrez. That boy was being searched for. So, Nacho, who had become Demas, began living in the shelter, and the real Demas was buried under the name Nacho Navarro. Julio Dominguez, the uncle of the orphaned Nacho, didn't have to do the dirty work of getting rid of his cousin's unwanted son. All he had to do was identify the charred body as his nephew's, which he did. That's my simple story, Cairo, Demas sighed. And then? Cairo looked into the young man's eyes. Then I went to college. I wanted to become a graphic artist. Then there was an unfortunate incident. I was falsely accused of a crime. It was proven that it wasn't my fault, but by then I had already served 6 months. With such a past, it's hard to find a job, and housing is tough too. I lived with guys from the same shelter as me, and then I decided to go back to my hometown to claim what rightfully belonged to me. But no one even wanted to listen. After all, Nacho Navarro had died many years ago. That's how I became a vagabond. You won't be a vagabond anymore, Nacho. I'll help you reclaim your name and your belongings. You know, I've been thinking about you. I remembered your drawings. Do you remember, you drew a huge bonfire for some performance? Oh, right. They were staging some fairy tale. Yes, I was praised then. They called me a prodigy and predicted a bright future, he smiled. You will have a bright future, buddy, believe me. Cairo poured another half glass of cognac. By the way, do you still draw with those soft pencils? You mean oil pastels? Yes, I guess. I'm not very knowledgeable about these things, brother. Yes, I draw. Not only with pastels, but also with other materials. I'll hire you as my daughter's drawing teacher. Is that a good job for you? You'll live with us until we sort out the matter with your uncle. Cairo. Is it true? Are you taking a vagabond into your home? No, Nacho, I'm taking in the boy whose picture is still with me, and that touched my 5-year-old daughter deeply. Though, you know, I wouldn't mind having a vagabond teacher, he laughed. They, without planning, jumped up and hugged each other tightly. Dimas Nacho began living with the Diaz family. He taught Agata drawing and created sketches for the advertising of Cairo's company, which developed various software. Agata became very attached to her drawing teacher and started making progress in the art she had never dreamed of before. One evening, after Cairo and Nacho, as everyone called him, had discussed business, Cairo said, "You know, it's time to start on your case, buddy." "What do you mean?" Nacho didn't understand. "About restoring your name and rights to everything your parents left. After all, your uncle and his wife took everything. They've settled in nicely." "Yes, but how will we prove it?" Nacho wondered. "How?" "You'll talk about the camp, about your parents. And what if they deny everything? We'll do a DNA test. Kinship will be evident in any case." "Right. I hadn't thought of that. I can't imagine our meeting." "Don't worry, I'll be there. I'll also use my connections. I have many friends and partners. You won't be lost, buddy." He patted the young man on the shoulder. Nacho visibly perked up. "You know, Agata and I were drawing today. She wanted to draw her mom. You know, she drew her with a belly. When I asked why, she just replied that she's going to have a little brother or sister soon." "Is that true, Cairo?" "No, she's just fantasizing. Agata is always making things up and inventing stories," he laughed. "She looked so serious," Nacho smiled. "Sometimes I think your daughter knows much more than all of us combined." They chatted a bit more and went to bed. Nacho was nervous. For the meeting organized by the social services, he and Cairo arrived first. Uncle Julio, apparently, wasn't in a hurry to see his long-buried nephew. Arriving 10 minutes late, he still showed up. Alone, without his wife. "Will you recognize your nephew in this young man, Mr. Dominguez?" asked the woman in a business suit. "No. My nephew has long been deceased." His face took on a mournful expression. "But Mr. Gutierrez claims that another boy was buried in his place." "Mr. Gutierrez, please explain what happened." "This man wanted to kill me," he blurted out, looking his uncle straight in the eyes. "What are you talking about? It's obvious this man on the left knows nothing about our relationship with Nacho. I loved my nephew. He was the only son of my cousin Ana." "Mr. Gutierrez, why do you say that? Do you have any evidence?" asked the Iron Lady, a social services employee. "I heard it with my own ears. I couldn't sleep and went downstairs. The door to the living room was locked, and I could hear the quiet voices of my uncle and aunt. That's when I learned that Uncle Julio wanted to deal with me, or at least he wasn't ruling it out. I decided to run away, but 2 days later, I was sent to the camp. I stayed there for 3 or 4 days and then ran away. I left my locket in that shed where later, as I understood, they found the charred body of that poor boy who was buried under my name. I was mistaken for him because I had his book, a signed book. I was deprived of a normal childhood, lived in the shelter until I was 16, and then in a college dormitory. I'm sure my uncle knew I wasn't his nephew, but it suited him to claim him dead. Why am I wasting my time listening to the ramblings of some crazy guy? Mr. Dominguez's face turned as red as a tomato. Let's all calm down and approach this matter with a cool head, said the Iron Lady. DNA is the best way to prove Mr. Gutierrez's claims. We'll need to do a test. I will schedule the time and place for the procedure. You just need to go there and take it. Then we'll have a more concrete discussion. It's been many years, and the boy was only 7 back then. DNA is the best way. I wouldn't be surprised if he changes his blood, Nacho said as he and Cairo were returning from the medical center where they had the DNA test done. They had a new meeting scheduled with the social services for the next day. Nacho, you're quite the fantasist. How could that be possible? Cairo laughed. Cairo, this villain is capable of anything to maintain his comfort and financial security. All right, buddy, don't get worked up. Everything will be resolved, and very soon, very soon. Thank you, Cairo, thank you, my friend. How lucky I am to have met you. First in the camp, and then on that empty road. Yes, and it's all related to fire. First, you drew it, and then you pulled me out of the flames, Cairo laughed. I'm in your debt for life. Oh, come on. I couldn't just stand by and watch someone die. This morning, the DNA results arrived, the Iron Lady said slowly. Nacho held his breath, a painful pang in his chest. There is no kinship between you. Nacho's heart sank, as if it had dropped into his stomach. How could this be? It should have shown at least 40%. After all, Julio Dominguez was Anna's cousin, Nacho's mother. This is impossible, Nacho said with a trembling voice. He must have tampered with the results. Mr. Gutierrez, this is absolutely excluded. I told you he's a trickster. A charlatan wanting to profit from my money. Julio's face turned red again, as if he had run several blocks without stopping. Quiet, the Iron Lady said sternly. Let's not get worked up. The facts are against you, Mr. Gutierrez. I'm not Gutierrez. I'm Nacho Navarro. I should inherit my parents' house and their business. My father put so much work into it, and this child killer took it all for himself. Yes, back then I was small and couldn't stand up to him. I was scared and ran away. But now I'm not going to stay on the sidelines. Please calm down. I will try to do something more. But what more is there to prove? Throw out this scoundrel. Julio Dominguez stood up from his seat. I'm not staying here any longer. I have important matters to attend to, and I'm wasting my precious time on nonsense that's not worth a damn. Nacho sat on the porch of the Diaz family home. He had already had his 3rd glass of whiskey with ice, but it didn't help. Why did the test show no kinship at all? Could it be that the uncle really did something? Maybe he bribed the lab technician? You can expect anything from that scoundrel, even the worst. He went to his room and took out a metal box from his nightstand, where he had kept all his treasures as a child. He had also hidden a plastic ball with the inscription "Our little Nachito delighted the world on March 19, 2003 in it. Inside was a tag and a tuft of baby hair, his baby hair. Also in the box was his first lost tooth. If he submitted these for examination, he could prove he was the son of the Navarras. With this happy thought, he fell asleep, not even bothering to undress. They were summoned for a discussion again. The DNA results were announced once more. This time they had examined the tooth and hair of little Nacho Navarro. The result was positive. Why is this all going on? Uncle Julio fumed. It's obvious this is an imposter who somehow got hold of these materials. So, you think I'm a thief of baby hair and teeth? Nacho sneered. And why didn't you provide all this sooner? The uncle asked sarcastically. Indeed, Mr. Gutierrez, why didn't you bring these materials right away? The Iron Lady stared at him unblinkingly. I just forgot. Nacho started losing control. He hated being pressured, he had hated it since childhood. Mr. Dominguez, you have no other choice but to recognize this man as your nephew. He is entitled to the house and everything else, and you. And me? I've lived in that house for 14 years. By the way, I've put the house up for sale. As for the business, it's already gone. I'm bankrupt. So there's nothing for you to inherit, smart guy, he smirked crookedly. You ruined the whole business. You couldn't even keep what was already built before you. Nacho stood up from his chair and, casting a scornful glance at his uncle, left the office. Blanca organized a celebratory dinner to honor Nacho's victory in proving his claim. Now, everything that his uncle hadn't yet squandered would return to him. Listen, Blanca suddenly began as everyone sat down at the table. Why didn't the DNA show kinship with the uncle? This means he's not really related to Nacho. Blanca has a point, Cairo pondered. Nacho, do you know anything about your uncle? Although you were just a little boy back then. Do you think he might have been adopted or something? Nacho asked, his hand with a piece of meat on the fork hovering near his mouth. It's not that important now, but still, Blanca took a sip of water from a tall glass. He's really a stranger to you, and wanted. I don't even want to think about it. But now everything will be all right. Now we need to restore the documents and everything else. And the grave? Blanca suddenly asked. That boy is buried under Nacho's name. I think that's also fixable. We just need to replace the plaque, that's all, Cairo said with a smile. Nacho Navarro became a local celebrity. Journalists interviewed him, and newspapers wrote about the return of a man who had been considered dead for many years. The orphan boy who had escaped from the orphanage and was mistaken for Nacho Navarro also gained fame. Information spreads very quickly these days, and this case was no exception. Marita Ortiz put down her textbook and pondered. She had recently learned that her parents had adopted her from an orphanage when she was about 2 years old. But that wasn't all. She was told that she had a brother. At the time of her adoption, he would have been around 7 years old. And he lived in an orphanage in a neighboring town. Where are you? Marita said aloud. I need to find you. She only knew that her brother's name was Dimas Gutierrez. That name was given to him by his parents, but who knows, maybe he now has a completely different name, as he might have been adopted. Marita entered her brother's name and surname into a search engine. Many articles came up about the sensational case of Nacho Navarro's return to the world, who had been thought dead for about 14 years, although another child named Dimas Gutierrez had died. The orphanage from which he had escaped was indeed the one where her brother had lived. Could it be him? Could he have been thought alive all these years, while he actually died when he was 7? Tears streamed down her face. Why did her parents tell her about this now? Although what would change? Her brother had been dead for 14 years. He would have been 21 now. Marita decided that she should try to find the person who, intentionally or not, had been posing as her brother all these years. Sweetie, let me go with you, Marita's mother said when she learned that Marita wanted to talk to the person who had been mistaken for her brother for many years. No need, Mom, I'm already grown up. I'm 16. Besides, Laura lives in this city, I'll stay with her. Laura was a friend of Marita's. She had recently entered college and moved to a neighboring town. She was glad that Marita was coming to visit. They had been friends since they were 5 and had a hard time with their separation, even though it was temporary. Marita got off the bus and looked around. She spotted Laura almost immediately. Laura was standing by a car, chatting on the phone with someone, as usual. Marita waved her hand and walked towards her. Laura quickly said goodbye to whoever she was talking to, stuffed her phone into her bag, and rushed to greet her friend. "Hi," Laura said with feeling, hugging Marita. "I missed you so much." "Hi," Marita said, burying her face in her friend's curly hair. "I missed you so much too. It's been so lonely without you. I should have gone to college with you, but I decided to stay in school. Let's go quickly. You can tell me everything in order." Laura pulled her friend towards the car. "I'll go with you," Laura said firmly after listening to Marita. "Thank you, Lorita." Marita took her friend's hand and squeezed it gently. "I'm so nervous. I don't even know if he'll talk to me. I don't know who this person is." "We'll find out together," Laura smiled encouragingly. "I only have the address, but I'm not sure if he lives there now or not. I read that he was staying with some friend, I think. We'll find out everything now." They arrived at the house around 4 in the afternoon. There was a car parked there, and a chubby man with a mustache was loading something into the trunk. A painted blonde woman with curly hair stood by the car. She looked bewildered, her face showing disappointment. "Who are they?" Laura asked. "They drove a bit further and parked." "I have no idea. Maybe that's the uncle of the guy, well, the one mistaken for your brother, right?" "Yes." "Listen, I'll go ask them where to find this Nacho Navarro." Marita jumped out of the car. "Hello." She greeted the blonde woman. The woman nodded, not bothering to respond. "Can you tell me where I can find Nacho? Nacho Navarro? He hasn't even taken possession yet, and already the girls are swarming him," the blonde woman huffed. I just wanted to talk to him. He's the one who posed as my real brother," Marita said, a bit embarrassed. "Just talking. You can find him at that big shot Cairo Diaz's place, his sponsor. He even left us a business card. If you want, dig through that box over there. It has all kinds of useless papers," the blonde woman said somewhat disdainfully and turned away. Marita felt uneasy, but she approached the box she was pointed to. Fortunately, the business card was right on top. It seemed it had been thrown away last. The girl quickly grabbed the card and rushed back to the car. "Well?" Laura asked impatiently. "What did you find out?" "Here," Marita handed her friend the business card. "We need to look for him at Cairo Diaz's." The blonde, who seemed bitter about life, for some reason called him Navarro's sponsor. "Maybe he's the friend mentioned in the article I read online." At exactly 7 in the evening, the girls arrived at the given address. They were met by Blanca. The house smelled of mulled wine and some baked goods. Nacho was sitting at a small table in the living room, drawing something. Agatha sat next to him, intently watching every movement of his pencil. "Nacho, dear, these lovely ladies have come to talk to you." "Oh, hello." He jumped to his feet. "Please, have a seat," Blanca said to Marita and Laura. "Agatha, dear, come with me, Nacho needs to talk." The girl obediently, though reluctantly, followed her mother out of the living room. "I'm sorry," Marita began, "for barging into your life like this. It's just very important for me to learn anything about my brother." "To be honest, I don't really know your brother," Nacho replied. "By chance, I was mistaken for him because of a backpack and a book with his name on it. You know, he essentially saved me." "How?" Marita asked, surprised. "If they hadn't found him in that almost completely burned down shed, my uncle would have surely found me and squashed me like a fly." "What are you saying? Your uncle wanted to kill you?" "At least he didn't rule it out. If necessary, I think he would have done it. He would have found a way to get rid of his 7-year-old nephew, the heir to the fortune and the home of his parents who died in a car crash." "How awful." "The wife, if it was her, must have been a real witch," Marita smiled. "She talked to me as if I were not a person, but dirt under her feet." "I barely remember her," Nacho said. "And that's probably for the best. Do you know anything about my brother? Marita asked hopefully. No, unfortunately, nothing. I found out about him later, when I started being called Dimas Gutierrez. I didn't resist, it was the only way for me to survive. I was very scared. Nacho suddenly stopped and stared at Laura. She smiled at him. Marita noticed that this guy seemed to like her. How I'd love to draw your portrait, he said, looking straight into the girl's eyes. In pencil? Wow. No one has ever offered me that, Laura giggled, not looking away. When are you free? Maybe we can meet and I can make my dream come true? Well, I'm free all day tomorrow. Laura began twirling a strand of hair around her right index finger. Wonderful. Will you give me your number? Nacho's eyes sparkled as if he had just been told he'd won a ton of pure gold. They said their goodbyes, and the girls returned to Laura's small apartment. They chatted in the kitchen over a cup of tea that evening. Nacho Navarro is such a sweetheart, Laura said dreamily. Have you got a crush on him or something? Marita asked with a sly smile. Well, I hope you don't have a crush on him. Laura asked cautiously in return. No, I was thinking about something else. Damn, I still didn't find out anything about my brother. Though, what can be known? He died at the age of 7. Your brother saved Nacho. He had a great mission, and he fulfilled it brilliantly. Girlfriend, Laura patted her friend's hand. Yes, Dimas did you a favor, Marita smirked. What if he starts hitting on you? He doesn't seem like a lecherous jerk. Although, you know, I might start hitting on this guy with eyes that see through this world. Laura dreamily rolled her eyes. Oh boy. You're head over heels, Lorita. When do people find the time? You should be thinking about your studies, not romantic dates. Don't be a bore, Mari. She playfully nudged her friend. One doesn't exclude the other. In fact, it even complements it. They sat on a bench in the park. Today, Nacho promised to show Laura her finished portrait. Here, look, he said cheerfully, opening a large folder. Holy Mary! Laura exclaimed. Blood rushed to her cheeks. It's so wonderful. I look much better in this portrait than in real life. She lowered her eyes. No way. My whole life wouldn't be enough to capture your beauty, that light that flows straight from your soul. You're such a romantic, Nacho, Laura giggled. You know, I'm so grateful to fate that I went with Marita that day. Otherwise, we would have never met, and I wouldn't have seen this miracle. Her eyes turned back to the portrait. How is Marita? She's fine. She left the day before yesterday. I'm so sorry I couldn't help her. But I really didn't know anything about that boy, Nacho said sadly. There's nothing to be done, Laura sighed. Marita was luckier than her little brother. She was adopted when she was around 2 years old, and I wonder why he wanted to run away. You know, I once had a dream about that boy, about Dimas. And what was the dream about? Laura asked, looking into his eyes with interest. He seemed to come up to me, patted me on the shoulder, and said, help my little sister find Blanca Diaz. Mom didn't even know she was alive. I couldn't protect my little sister. Let them meet. Blanca Diaz, Laura said slowly. I heard that name somewhere recently. Maybe in a book or something. Blanca Diaz, Nacho suddenly jumped up. That's Cairo's wife. The one you're living with? Yes, and by the way, I'll soon move into my own house. Just waiting for the paperwork and to inherit it. That's great. Laura smiled. You'll be able to get a dog. A dog? I hadn't thought about that. What kind of dogs do you like? Oh, I like small ones, like a miniature Spitz or a Chihuahua. Will you help me choose? Laura felt pleasant shivers running down her body. Could it be that this artist likes her too? Yes, definitely, otherwise, why would he ask her to help him choose a dog? Of course, I'll help. It's better to get a dog from a breeder rather than a pet store. It's more reliable and simpler. As you say, Nacho extended his hand to her. Shall we go for a walk? I'd love to, Laura said, taking his hand. And they walked along the park path, together. Both felt as though something important, very significant and inevitable, had happened in their lives. What was it? Love? Maybe. But at that moment, they didn't concern themselves with it. Blanca was sitting in the kitchen, finishing her herbal tea. She always drank it at night to sleep better. Nacho appeared in the doorway. You're still here? He smiled. Yes, I'm finishing my tea and then I'll go to bed. Do you want some tea? Yes, I wouldn't mind. Nacho sat down on a chair next to Blanca. Blanca, I wanted to ask. Your parents. Where were you born? I used to live in a village not far from the city. She moved her cup to Nacho. I lived with my mom first. Then my grandmother took me in because she hated my mom's second husband with a passion, although, you know, he was a nice guy. Do you have a brother or sister? I had a brother, and then a sister was born. But they died. Terrible accident. Why are you asking all of a sudden? Well, you see, there's something that's been bothering me. Sorry if I seem like an idiot. I somehow feel that you are connected to Marita, the girl who came to talk to me, and her brother Demas. Where are you getting these ideas, Nacho? Blanca was surprised. You'll probably think I'm crazy, but I had a dream. Demas asked me to find Blanca Diaz, calling her his older sister, and asked me to protect Marita. So, not only are you an artist, but also a medium? Blanca smiled, finishing her tea in one gulp. Nacho. What? Did you remember something? I remember the name Demas. That was really my brother's name. You see, I hardly ever interacted with him. My grandmother didn't allow it, telling my mom that she would raise me and that I should handle the rest on my own. I didn't argue, though I missed him. I didn't try to go against my grandmother. She was strict. Could it be that they didn't die back then? Could she have put them in an orphanage? No, I can't believe that. Is it about DNA again? Or do you not want to check? But, Nacho, we can't just believe a dream and a coincidence of names, or should we check? It won't cost me anything. Blanca ran her hand through her luxurious hair and stared out the window where the full moon was peeking through. Full moon, so I'll probably be up until 3 again. I don't care whether it's a full moon or not, Nacho smiled. You're still too young for it to affect you. And you're not exactly an old crone. Nacho laughed and got up from his chair, tossing his cup into the dishwasher. Thanks for the tea, Blanquita. You're welcome, she said thoughtfully. The idea of potentially finding a sister, a real sister, had firmly taken root in her mind. She had always dreamed of having a sister when she was a child. Blanca decided to visit Marita on her own. It was good that Laura had given her Marita's number. Blanca was nervous about calling her potential sister. What if they weren't really siblings, and she'd just give herself and her potential sister false hope? The girl had gone through so many trials. At least she was adopted early and didn't have to live in an orphanage. Did Demas really run away to find her? God, how awful. How could her grandmother have dared to send her own grandchildren to an orphanage? Where did such hatred towards her daughter and son-in-law come from? She had always lived by her own ideas and rules, but to send living grandchildren to an orphanage was beyond Blanca's comprehension. Marita met Blanca at the bus station. Hi, Blanca said, hugging the girl. Hi. Marita responded simply, hugging her back. Do you really think we're sisters? I don't know, Marita. It's all so spontaneous. Nacho and his dream. There are just too many coincidences. I think it's best for us to check. I would be so happy if I had such a wonderful sister like you, Marita said dreamily. Me too. I've always dreamed of having a younger sister. And I've always wanted an older one. Laura has an older sister. She always helped her with makeup and hairstyles for various school events and just gave advice. I felt so upset being the only child, having no one to discuss girl problems with. My mom, my adoptive mom, whom I absolutely adore, is a great friend, but it's still not the same. You can't really discuss your first kiss with her. Well, you can, but... Yes, you're right. I lived with my grandmother from the age of 7. There was no room for discussing a first kiss. You couldn't even sit crookedly. How did I get through all that? It's hard to believe that she really put you into an orphanage. Blanca couldn't stay long with Marita and her parents, who welcomed the young woman very warmly. She needed to return home. Agatha struggled with being apart from her mother, even if it was only for a couple of days. You know, even if we're not sisters, you can always turn to me for help, Blanca said as she hugged Marita goodbye, with feeling. Thank you, Blanca. And I really hope the test will be positive. So do I, Blanca patted her on the head. Blanca jumped at every ping announcing a new email. And then, in the evening, the day after returning home, she received the long-awaited email with the results of the test. It was terrifying to open it, fearful of disappointment, but she had to face the truth. Yes. The kinship was confirmed at 85%. She and Marita were sisters. Blanca found it hard to breathe, her head spun dizzily. Her grandmother turned out to be even worse than she had thought, trying to justify her actions. But now, there was no more room for excuses. Blanca couldn't understand how someone could send their own grandchildren to an orphanage and then continue to live comfortably, raising a granddaughter from the first marriage of their daughter. Blanca felt a strong wave of nausea rise in her throat. Was it from the excitement? The Diaz household was bustling with activity from the morning. They were expecting Marita and her parents. They decided to throw a party to celebrate that Marita and Blanca had found each other, that they were sisters, as they now called each other. I want to raise a toast to Blanca and Marita, Cairo said, standing up from the table. Now our family is even larger and closer. Cheers! Everyone exclaimed. Blanca, why are you drinking mineral water? Laura asked in surprise, always noticing every little detail. I can't have alcohol. I didn't realize, was Agatha's painting accurate? Nacho smiled. What painting? Blanca didn't understand. She painted you with a baby bump. Is it true? Are you expecting a baby? I didn't know Agatha had painted me. Yes, I wanted to say today. Cairo and I are going to have a baby. Cheers! Even more people in the family. The cheers rang out again at the table. I will raise this baby into a person, Agatha said seriously, downing her orange juice in one gulp. Everyone burst into laughter. The future child is lucky to have such a sister, Laura said cheerfully. Nacho sat on his porch and looked at the stars scattered like beads across the night sky. He recalled his dream once more. How much the brother wanted to help his little sister. He found a way to declare this even from the other side. Nacho had always believed in the power of the soul, and now he believed even more. So much had happened in the last 2 months. Some people don't experience that many events in a lifetime. I need to paint a bonfire across the entire wall of the living room, Nacho thought, smiling to himself. After all, everything started with the flame, cruel but at the same time bringing so much joy into the lives of a few people. Let this flame protect the home, welcoming only those with whom I will be happy and driving away all kinds of scoundrels.